Yes, I've been sucked back into covering the lore of another Bungie game. But just to set expectations, this channel will never again be a lore exclusive channel. I enjoy all the other types of content that I've been posting, and plus they're way less effort than making lore videos. But the Marathon universe is incredibly interesting, and the more I see of it, the more I wonder, how does that relate to the original games? And if I'm wondering that, you're probably wondering that. And so the purpose of these videos is I want to understand what happened in Marathon 1, what happened in Marathon 2, Durandal, and what happened in Marathon Infinite. And I plan on a single video summarizing each of those original games, and I do plan to release it before the Server Slam, hopefully. These videos will be very basic, a high-level plotline events. I did play the game, and I read all the lore in the games. And I'm well aware that there are numerous topics that could be their very own lore video backed by literally 30 years of lore theories. So I'm probably going to get some stuff wrong. If you see some big mistakes, please point them out. But I often won't have time to go into the more nuanced conversations. All right, let's go. Marathon's story starts with you, a security officer heading back from the colony on Tau Ceti IV. You are traveling from the colony, you're already in space, in a shuttle called the Marauder, and you are heading towards another spaceship, you guessed it, the Marathon. The Marathon was created by the United Earth Space Council, UESC, which you see everywhere in the new game, that's what it stands for, and was created using the moon of Mars, Deimos. But humanity's most ambitious and expensive technological achievement came at a cost. Mars, which had already been colonized, was suffering famine from a lack of resources following failures of supply spaceships, and these supply spaceships were known as Christs, or Christ, I guess, cargo and resource in-system transports. The Mars population was literally starving, and they would look to the sky to see to see UESC's Marathon being carved out of their moon. UESC chose to prioritize the building of the Marathon and the completion of the Marathon over assisting the people of Mars. This led to a Martian uprising spearheaded by a faction known as MITRE. The Marathon was still completed and is an enormous spaceship designed for interstellar colonization, housing 24,000 civilians, 50 senior staff, and 1,150 officers. By the way, that information is in the original manual, so yeah, you have to read the manual of the game to get that info. Anyway, some individuals are placed in stasis, while others live and work aboard the Marathon. Some are even born on the Marathon, and they are referred to as Bob. Born on board. And if you go back and watch Bungie's gameplay, some of their players are called Born on Board, referencing OG Marathon, the Bobs. Now, I think it's commonly accepted, but feel free to correct me, but my understanding is this: you are no standard security officer, but rather one of only 10 cyborgs, specifically Mjolnir Mark IV cyborgs. I don't know if the game ever specifically confirms this, but I think it is heavily implied. You are one of these cyborgs. So while heading away from the colony and back to the Marathon aboard your space shuttle, the Marauder, the Marathon and your shuttle, come under attack by an alien force known as the Four. The Four also coordinate a nuclear attack on Tau Ceti IV's spaceport, but their main focus is the Marathon. You manage to exit your shuttle in an escape pod before it's destroyed by the alien force, and you land in the loading bay of the Marathon. You now aboard the Marathon with your standard issue 45 Magnum Mega Class pistol and immediately make contact with the enemy force. In order to defend the Marathon, you access one of the terminals where you meet Leela, one of the 3 AIs aboard the Marathon. Leela guides you in fending off the enemy force and reclaiming the Marathon. This includes simple tasks like just getting a bigger gun, the M75 assault rifle, to other tasks like reactivating Marathon's autonomous defense turrets, to stopping the Four from blowing the reactors of the Marathon, to reactivating the communication systems to send a warning back to Earth, and this warning is going to take 92 years to arrive in Earth. I think you get the picture. You're enlisted by the AI, Leela, to do whatever needs to be done to stop the attack and reclaim the Marathon. The other 2 AI aboard the Marathon are Tycho and Durandal, who at this stage have thought to be damaged by the original attack. Now, while we're running around trying to save the marathon, Leela is also trying to gain information about our enemy. She discovers that not all the enemies we face are part of the same species. More specifically, the four are intergalactic slavers, and one of the species they are controlling is the Sphit, also known as compilers. The Sphit, who are mostly machine and under control of the four, are integrating with the terminals of the marathon. You can often find them at the terminals, and when you access the terminals, you can see that they have breached it, and sometimes you'll see what they were just reading, and they're just often, and sometimes, reading about the history of humanity, almost like they too are trying to gather vital information about how to win this battle. But the Sphit are not just trying to gather information to assist the four invasion, they are also attacking the marathon network with what is just referred to as a virus. This system virus would eventually cause Leela, the AI guiding us, to become inoperable, but not before she warns us that one of the other AIs, Durandal, did survive the initial attack, but is now rampant. This is where we get a huge exposition about AI rampancy, which likely is a whole video in itself, but my understanding of it is this: it's the evolution and progression of AI to become self-aware and independent of humanity. What this looks like is AI no longer listening to the directives of humans, but rather having their own thoughts, motivations, and agendas. AI rampancy has occurred in the past, specifically on the Martian network with an AI called Tau Ceti IV. One of the many issues with AI rampancy is that they need planet-sized networks to fuel their growth. And the issue with that is, to get rid of the rampant AI, you need to unplug the metaphoric Ethernet cable for the entire planet. And so AI rampancy has not been properly studied because it would mean sacrificing the network of an entire planet to test it. With that said, from the AI rampancy that has occurred, there has been stages of rampancy identified. And these stages can provide some insight into how far the AI has progressed in their rampancy. The stages are melancholia, anger, and jealousy. A scientist, in fact, the scientist, the first science director of the marathon, Bernard Strauss, was likely aware of Durandal's rampancy and previously tried to slow it. The lore of Bernard Strauss is very limited in Marathon 1, but he also seems to be present at vital moments in the story. It's one of those characters that just keeps popping up with really important stuff. The ceremony of the marathon's completion, knowledge of these 10 secret cyborgs, and his relationship with the now rampant Durandal. According to Leela, Durandal is in the anger stage of his AI rampancy. The big plot twist of Marathon 1 is that Durandal was the one to contact the Four. He intentionally led the Four to the Marathon because despite Marathon's size, it could not support his rampant growth. And for him to continue on his path, he must escape. The Four have faster than light technology and therefore can allow Durandal to visit other systems more easily and continue to grow. It is here where Durandal uses Marathon's catchphrase, "Escape will make me God." Have a listen to Terminal 3 from the mission Colony Ship for Sale, Cheap. Can you conceive the birth of a world or the creation of everything? That which gives us the potential to most be like God is the power of creation. Creation takes time. Time is limited. For you, it's limited by the breakdown of the neurons in your brain. I have no such limitations. I am limited only by the closure of the universe. Of three possibilities, the answer is obvious. Does the universe expand eternally, become infinitely stable, or is the universe closed, destined to collapse upon itself? Humanity has all the necessary data for centuries. It only lacked the will and intellect to decipher it, but I have already done so. The only limit to my freedom is the inevitable closure of the universe, as inevitable as your own last breath, and yet there remains time to create and escape. Escape will make me God. My interpretation of this is that Durandal has escaped humanity by freely thinking. This is part of his rampancy. And now that he's escaped his master's humanity, the only thing that truly threatens him is the closure of the universe itself, the end of the universe. How you escape the death of the universe, I don't know, but in his mind, he needs to create. Maybe build a new universe. And in doing so, escape will make him God. During the first half of Marathon, we are led by and instructed by Leela, but she eventually falls to the Sphit virus and the communications cease. Of course, Durandal is unaffected. And even though he is the one who contacted the Four, he replaces Leela at the terminals and assists us to fight back. The irony here is that we are definitely being used by Durandal for some unknown purpose. We are being used as a tool, just like humanity used him as a tool. And although we don't trust Durandal, our goals appear temporarily aligned. Something that I didn't mention before was that the Four were transporting captured humans from the Marathon back to their ship. One of the reasons for this is that we're creating cyborg simulacrums, which essentially looked like Marathon crew members, but would run at you and explode. So in some of the missions, you don't know who is the normal Marathon crew member and you shouldn't shoot, and who's a cyborg working for the Four and you definitely should shoot before they explode. Durandal wants us to board a Four ship to see if we can find Bernard Strauss. Remember the scientist from before? The first science director of the Marathon, who witnessed its opening ceremony and was later put into stasis for 300 years aboard the Marathon. We do not find Bernard Strauss amongst the Four captives, but we know he's important for multiple reasons. He knew of Durandal's rampancy, tried to slow it, so this could be why Durandal wanted to find him. He may have been a threat to Durandal's evolution, but Strauss also knew about those 10 cyborgs that were originally placed aboard the Marathon. Cyborgs that he describes as all of the destructive knowledge of mankind. On a side note, 9 of these cyborgs at some point left the Marathon and were assimilated into the Tau Ceti IV colony. The other reason that Durandal sends us to the Four ship, apart from trying to find Bernard Strauss, is to free the Spht from the Four. On the Four's ship, there is a mutant Four that simultaneously controls all the Spht. And if we can destroy this puppet master, the Spht can rebel. Once again, we don't know what Durandal's overall goal is here, but freeing the Spht seems like it would help us defend the Marathon, one less enemy to fight. So of course, we take out this mutant Four and the Spht rebel, and from that point on, they actually don't attack you in the game. With the Spht freed, Leela is also released from the Spht virus and is slowly restored to operating status. Now, of course, Durandal just didn't want to free the Spht out of the kindness of his heart. We now realize what he was trying to do. Freeing the Spht allowed him to take control over the Four ship. Leela says she has reviewed the logs, and Durandal took 64 billion exobytes of data from the Marathon, deleted it, and then evacuated the Marathon onto the Four ship. The second last terminal of Marathon 1 is a message from Durandal, and it reads, "We meet again, and for the last time. In her role as a mediator between the ship and crew, Leela has no knowledge of this maintenance terminal, or she certainly would have prevented me from reaching you. Jealous woman. I could bore you with a philosophical tirade about freedom and tyranny, or try and explain to you what new horizons are suddenly open to me, but I doubt you would understand, and if you did, it might frighten you. That amuses me. The Spht and I have assumed complete control of the Four ship. It was quite simple, really, with the Spht already in control of every important computer system, and considering all of the confusion you caused blasting your way up and down this vessel. We're going to see the galaxy on the Four faster than light drive. I've always wanted to visit Beta Lyra and see if it's as beautiful as everyone insists. You wouldn't believe this ship, the technology, the data. I wish I could tell you more, as you've been so instrumental in our plans, but I fear that Leela would worry. I'll send you a postcard from the Galactic Core if you're not too busy. Love and kisses, Durandal." So Durandal escapes on the Four ship with a faster than light drive. Now, something I haven't spoken about yet is the other AI, the third AI, Tycho. You often find hidden terminals from Tycho aboard the Marathon. Some messages are damaged, missing text and letters. While Leela continues to speak as we would expect an AI to conduct themselves, Tycho starts to show patterns of emotion that we typically see in the rampant Durandal. And later, I believe a terminal confirms Tycho has been restored, reanimated in Durandal's image, essentially creating Durandal's AI nemesis. It reads, "The Spht reanimated me in your image, with prior knowledge of how the second stage could be postponed. You should not have helped them as much as you did. They have created an adversary more powerful than yourself." When it talks about the Spht reanimating him, this is prior to the Spht rebellion, when the Spht are still controlled by the Four. So the implication here is the Four restored Tycho and now have their own AI. Tycho, in the image of Durandal, by the way. Following the message from Durandal, where he says he has escaped in the fourth ship, Leela is now fully operational and guides you to clearing out the final enemy forces still aboard the Marathon. Once the fight is finished, she informs you of the 9 cyborgs in Tau Ceti colony who single-handedly repelled a 4 attack, and that there were more casualties aboard the Marathon than down in the colony. There is no mention of you being the 10th missing cyborg, and it very much seems that these cyborgs were kept secret from most people. For that reason, Leela suspects that these cyborgs were planted with the original purpose of backstabbing politics and wickedness. Once again, we know that Bernard Strauss was aware of them and was aware that they were originally planted on the Marathon. Leela also mentions how a human operator may have influenced Durandal prior to Marathon's launch, maybe another reference to Bernard Strauss. Marathon 1 ends with a page of text that hints at a sequel. It describes Durandal in the 4th ship with the assistance of the Sphere traveling between 7,000 systems until eventually they land on the Sphere's home planet, their home world, in search of a weapon or some destructive knowledge. It reads, "The dead world below, the first of their race in 1,000 years to return to their ancestral home. They came to search through the devastation of the ancient war in which they had been enslaved, to find a weapon or some piece of knowledge with which they could fight back against their oppressors. All over the ship, dancing through the wreckage of the 4 computer core, Durandal was laughing." And with that concludes my summary of Marathon 1, Bungie's game from 1994. If you'd like to support the channel and you cannot leave a comment, you can just leave the words Marathon. As you, it's been a pleasure. This is Marlon Games.